I stood there in my simple red dress, watching the woman in designer heels pour champagne over my head. "Gold digger," she hissed. The entire corporate party went silent, but then a voice cut through the crowd, deep, commanding, and furious. The billionaire host himself was walking toward us. Before we dive into this incredible story of how one humiliating moment changed everything, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this unfolds. Now let me tell you what really happened that night. My name is Anaya, and 3 months ago, I was nobody special. I worked 2 jobs just to keep my head above water, mornings at a small coffee shop downtown, afternoons tutoring high school kids in math. At 26, I was still living in a tiny apartment with a roommate, trying to save every penny for nursing school. My biggest luxury was the occasional movie night with a $5 pizza. That was my life. And honestly, I was okay with it. I had dreams, goals, and a plan to make something better of myself. But everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon when I found an envelope slipped under my apartment door. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind you see in fancy wedding invitations. My hands actually trembled as I opened it. Inside was an invitation to the Brooks Industries annual celebration, written in elegant gold lettering. At the bottom, it simply said, "Your presence is requested," with no signature, no return address, nothing to explain why someone like me would be invited to a corporate party for one of the city's most successful companies. I stared at that invitation for hours. Brooks Industries wasn't just any company, it was a billion-dollar empire. Their CEO, Calvin Brooks, was regularly featured in business magazines as one of the wealthiest men in the country. Why would I, a coffee shop worker and part-time tutor, receive an invitation to their exclusive annual party? I called the number on the invitation, but got only a professional voicemail saying the event details were confirmed and to dress formally. My roommate Katie thought I was crazy for even considering going. "You'll stick out like a sore thumb," she said, not unkindly. "These corporate events are for networking among rich people. What if it's some kind of mistake?" But something deep inside me insisted I had to go. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was the hope that this could somehow change my life. Whatever it was, I couldn't shake the feeling that this invitation meant something important. The next challenge was what to wear. I had exactly $43 in my checking account after paying rent, nowhere near enough for the kind of dress these events required. Katie came to my rescue, lending me a simple red dress she'd worn to her cousin's wedding. It wasn't designer, wasn't flashy, but it was elegant in its simplicity. I did my own hair and makeup, watching YouTube tutorials until my eyes burned. Looking in the mirror that night, I felt beautiful for the first time in months, even though I knew I'd be surrounded by women who spent more on their shoes than I made in a month. The Brooks Industries party was held at the Grand Meridian Hotel, the most expensive venue in the city. As I walked through the marble lobby toward the ballroom, I felt my confidence shrinking with every step. The other guests swept past me in designer gowns that probably cost more than my car, their jewelry catching the light from crystal chandeliers. The men wore perfectly tailored suits, their watches gleaming as they gestured with champagne flutes. These were business executives, entrepreneurs, investors, people who moved in circles I'd only read about in magazines. I found a quiet corner near the floor-to-ceiling windows and tried to blend in, nursing a glass of wine that probably cost more than my grocery budget for a week. The conversations around me were about stock prices, merger deals, vacation homes in the Hamptons. I felt like an imposter, like someone would discover I didn't belong and escort me out at any moment. That's when I noticed her watching me. She was tall, blonde, probably in her early 30s, wearing a silver gown that hugged her figure perfectly. Diamond earrings caught the light as she tilted her head, studying me with the kind of look you'd give a puzzle you couldn't solve. She whispered something to the 2 women beside her, and all 3 turned to stare at me. My cheeks burned with embarrassment, but I tried to hold my head high. The woman in silver finally approached me, her heels clicking against the polished marble floor. "I don't think we've met," she said, her voice sweet but with an edge that made my skin crawl. "I'm Melissa Harper." My husband is VP of Strategic Development here at Brooks Industries. She waited, clearly expecting me to introduce myself with some equally impressive title. I'm Inaya, I said simply, offering my hand. She shook it limply, her eyes scanning my dress, my shoes, my simple jewelry with barely concealed disdain. "And what company are you with?" she asked, her smile not reaching her eyes. I work at Sunrise Coffee," I admitted, immediately regretting my honesty. Her eyebrows shot up, and I could see her friends exchanging glances behind her. "A coffee shop?" Melissa's voice carried just loud enough for nearby conversations to pause. "How interesting. And you're here because—" I felt heat rising in my chest. "I received an invitation." "An invitation?" She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "To a Brooks Industries corporate event? Who's your plus one? Which executive brought you?" "I came alone," I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "I received my own invitation." The conversations around us had stopped completely now. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, watching this public interrogation with the fascination people reserve for car accidents. Melissa's smile grew wider, more predatory. "How fascinating," she purred. "A coffee shop worker receives a personal invitation to one of the most exclusive corporate events of the year. Tell me, Inaya from Sunrise Coffee, what exactly are you hoping to accomplish here tonight?" I should have walked away. Every instinct told me to leave with whatever dignity I had left, but something in her tone, in the way she was enjoying my discomfort, made me stand straighter. "I'm not hoping to accomplish anything. I was invited, so I came." "Oh, please." Melissa's mask finally slipped completely. "We all know what this is about. A young, pretty girl in a cheap dress at a party full of wealthy, successful men? It's the oldest story in the book." Her voice rose, making sure everyone could hear. "You're here looking for a meal ticket, aren't you? Hoping to catch yourself a rich husband?" The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Around us, the party had gone completely silent. Phones were being discreetly raised. I could see people starting to record what was clearly about to become a very public scene. My heart pounded so hard I thought everyone could hear it. "That's not true," I whispered, but my voice was lost in the vast ballroom. "Of course it is," Melissa continued, emboldened by her audience. "Girls like you think you can just show up at events like this and charm your way into a better life. Well, let me tell you something, sweetheart. We can spot a gold digger from a mile away." The words hung in the air like poison. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of all these people who were watching me like I was entertainment for their evening. "You don't know anything about me," I managed to say, my voice shaking with anger and humiliation. "Don't I?" Melissa reached for her champagne glass, and I saw the intent in her eyes a split second before she acted. "Let me make something clear to everyone here. This is what happens to gold diggers who try to infiltrate our world." The champagne was cold as it splashed over my head, soaking my hair, my dress, running down my face in humiliating rivulets. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Someone's phone camera flashed. Melissa's friends laughed behind their hands. "Gold digger," Melissa said again, loud enough for everyone to hear. She looked around at the crowd, triumphant. "Now everyone knows what you really are." I stood there dripping, fighting back tears, wondering how my life had led to this moment. The red dress Katie had lent me was ruined. My carefully styled hair hung in wet strands around my face. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me, and I knew this humiliation would follow me forever. Someone would post those photos online. This moment would define me in ways I couldn't even imagine. I was gathering what little dignity I had left, preparing to walk out of that ballroom with my head held as high as I could manage, when a voice cut through the silence like a knife. "What exactly is going on here?" The voice was deep, commanding, with an authority that made everyone freeze. The crowd began to part, and I could hear whispers rippling through the room. Footsteps approached, measured, confident, the sound of someone who owned every space they entered. I looked up through my wet hair and saw him for the first time. He was tall, probably in his early 50s, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His suit was immaculate, his presence commanding in a way that made everyone else seem smaller. I didn't recognize him, but clearly everyone else did. The whispers grew louder. That's Calvin Brooks, the CEO himself. Oh my God, Melissa is so screwed. Calvin Brooks, the billionaire host of this very party, the man whose company's invitation had brought me here in the first place. He was looking at me with an expression I couldn't read, but his eyes, there was something familiar about his eyes. I asked a question, he said, his voice carrying easily through the vast ballroom. What is happening here? Melissa stepped forward, her confidence already wavering. Mr. Brooks, This woman doesn't belong here. She's clearly a gold digger trying to— Stop. The single word silenced her completely. Calvin moved closer to me, and I saw his hands were shaking slightly. His face had gone pale, like he'd seen a ghost. What's your name? Inaya, I whispered, my voice barely audible. He closed his eyes for a moment, like he was in pain. When he opened them again, they were bright with unshed tears. Inaya what? Inaya Martinez. A sound escaped his throat, something between a laugh and a sob. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small photograph, worn at the edges like it had been carried for years. With trembling hands, he held it up beside my face, and I could see it was a picture of a young woman who looked remarkably like me. Your mother, he whispered. You have her eyes. Her smile. The world tilted. Around us, the party had gone completely silent, but I barely noticed. What are you talking about? Maria Martinez, he said, his voice breaking. She was the love of my life. We met in college, before Brooks Industries, before any of this. He gestured at the luxury surrounding us. We were going to get married. But my family, they didn't approve. They thought she wasn't good enough, that she would hurt my business prospects. My legs felt weak. I remembered my mother mentioning a boyfriend from college, someone she'd loved deeply but lost touch with. She'd never told me his name, said it was too painful to talk about. They forced us apart, Calvin continued, his eyes never leaving my face. Paid her to disappear, told her I didn't want her anymore. I believed their lies about her only being interested in my family's money. It wasn't until years later that I learned the truth, that she'd been pregnant when she left, that she'd had my daughter. The champagne dripping from my hair felt like ice. The room was spinning. That's impossible. I've been looking for you for 3 years, he said, his voice barely controlled. Ever since your mother passed away and I learned you existed. I hired private investigators, searched through every record I could find. When they finally found you working at that coffee shop, I didn't know how to approach you. I thought if I invited you here, maybe I could find a way to introduce myself, to explain. He looked around at the party, at Melissa's horrified face, at the crowd of people recording every word. I never imagined it would happen like this. Melissa had gone white as marble. Mr. Brooks, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Calvin turned to her with a look that could have frozen fire. You're sorry. You humiliated my daughter. You called her a gold digger in front of 300 people. You poured champagne on her like she was beneath you. His voice rose with each word. You don't even know her, and you decided to destroy her for your own entertainment. The silence in the ballroom was deafening. I could see people backing away from Melissa like she had a contagious disease. Her husband appeared at her side, his face red with embarrassment and anger. Ma'am, Calvin said, turning back to me with infinite gentleness. I know this is overwhelming. I know you have no reason to trust me or believe me, but you are my daughter, and I will spend the rest of my life making up for the years we've lost if you'll let me. I looked at this man, this billionaire who everyone in the room treated like royalty, and I saw something in his eyes that I'd been missing my whole life. I saw a father's love. I saw regret and hope and desperate longing all mixed together. My mother used to talk about a man from college, I whispered. She said he was the only one who ever really understood her. She said he was brilliant and kind, and that losing him broke her heart. Calvin nodded, tears streaming down his face now. She was the only one who ever really understood me too. Losing her was the biggest mistake of my life. I won't make that mistake with you. Around us, I could hear phones buzzing as people shared what they'd witnessed. By tomorrow, this story would be everywhere, but not as the humiliation of a gold digger. Instead, it would be the story of a father and daughter finding each other in the most unlikely way. Melissa tried to approach us, her face streaked with tears of panic. "Mr. Brooks, please, I can explain." "No," he said without even looking at her. "You've explained enough. Security will escort you and your husband out." "And Melissa?" He finally turned to her, his voice deadly quiet. "You're going to find your husband looking for new employment very soon." I watched as security appeared to escort a sobbing Melissa and her mortified husband from the party. The woman who had humiliated me minutes before was now facing the destruction of her own life, her husband's career ruined by her cruelty. Calvin took off his jacket and wrapped it around my shoulders, shielding me from the stairs and cameras. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's get you cleaned up and somewhere quiet where we can talk." As we walked toward the exit, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. I heard whispers following us, not cruel ones now, but amazed ones. People were already calling it the most incredible thing they'd ever witnessed at a corporate event. "Can I ask you something?" I said as we reached the elevator. "Anything. Why didn't you just call me?" "Why the elaborate invitation to this party?" He smiled sadly. "Because I was a coward. I was terrified you'd reject me, that you'd blame me for not being there when you and your mother needed me. I thought if we met in a social setting, maybe it would be easier somehow." The elevator doors closed behind us, shutting out the chaos of the party. In the quiet space, just the two of us, I really looked at him for the first time, and I could see it, the resemblance my mother must have loved. The eyes that matched mine, the stubborn set of the jaw I'd inherited. "This is going to change everything," I said. "Yes," he agreed, "but only if you want it to. I won't force anything on you, Inaya. I've already caused enough pain by not being there for the first 26 years of your life." I thought about my tiny apartment, my 2 jobs, my struggles to pay for nursing school. I thought about my mother, who had worked herself to exhaustion to provide for me, who had never asked for help because her pride wouldn't let her, and I thought about the woman in the silver dress who had tried to destroy me simply because she could. "I want to know everything," I said finally. "About you, about my mother, about what really happened between you." He smiled through his tears. "We have the rest of our lives to talk about everything." As the elevator reached the ground floor, I realized that the worst moment of my life had somehow become the best. The humiliation that had nearly destroyed me had led me to the father I'd never known I had. Sometimes the universe has a strange way of giving you exactly what you need, even when you don't know you need it. The gold digger they tried to shame was actually the daughter of the man who owned everything around us. And for the first time in my life, I finally understood where I came from and who I really was. Can you imagine discovering your billionaire father at your lowest moment? Inaya's story proves that sometimes our worst days lead to our greatest blessings. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Inaya's shoes. And remember, you never know who might be watching when life tests you the most.